Imagine the darkness that breathes stone and the singing that tears the soul apart. Imagine a hero who challenges the gods themselves and a journey where truth disappears over the horizon. This is not fiction. These are the myths of ancient Greece. In this video, you will go on a journey with Perseus, who will look into the eyes of Medusa the Gorgon herself without losing his mind. How did he manage to defeat the creature whose gaze turns him to stone? What gift from the gods did he receive, and what is hidden behind the shine of his sword? And then, even deeper into the abyss, you will hear the song of the Sirens who lured sailors to their death. But Odysseus is not an ordinary person. How did he survive their singing? And what does this scene symbolize, not only in myth, but in the depths of the human soul? These are more than just legends. They are mirrors that reflect human fear, wisdom, passion, and sacrifice. Don't just watch. Feel as if you are standing next to the heroes, learning from them, and fighting alongside them. Subscribe to the channel if you feel that myths are not the past, but the key to understanding yourself. And watch the video to the end, because the real discovery awaits after the last line of the legend. The myth of Perseus. Among the stars and curses, in a world where the words of the gods were as immutable as the movement of the constellations, a name appears, Perseus. But he was not born a hero. He became one through fear, sin, and an inevitable prophecy. In the city of Argos, King Odysseus, having no heir, asked the Delphic oracle about his fate. But the answer was like a lightning strike. You will have no son, but your grandson will kill you. This prophecy became the germ of a legend. In horror, Odysseus locked his daughter Danae in a bronze tower where no man had access. But he forgot. If people cannot reach it, then the gods can do anything. In the form of a golden rain, Zeus penetrated Danae. From this divine radiance she became pregnant and gave birth to a boy, whom she named Perseus. The baby had not yet taken his first step, but had already become a symbol of broken oaths, anger, and fear. Odysseus, frightened by the fulfillment of the prophecy, did not dare to kill his grandson himself. Instead, he sealed Danae and the child in a wooden chest and threw them into the sea. He thought that the waves would do what he himself did not dare to do. But the sea that day was a silent ally of fate. The chest did not sink. It sailed to the island of Serif, where Perseus was found by the kind fisherman Dictys. He raised the boy, and Danae lived in the shadow, but protected. But where there is light, there is also a shadow. Polydectes, the king of Serif, was fascinated by Danae's beauty, but young Perseus, already strong and proud, stood between his mother and royal ambitions. Then Polydectes came up with a plan. He announced that he wanted to marry, but to another woman, and collected gifts. Perseus, having nothing to thank, promised to bring the head of Medusa the Gorgon, the only mortal of the three sisters, whose hair was woven from poisonous snakes and whose gaze turned her to stone. This was not a challenge, but a sentence. But Perseus accepted it, not out of fear, but with a sense of justice. For if fate had destined him to be born of gold and storm, then he had to go a path worthy of heroes. Medusa is not just a monster. She is a woman, cursed by Athena for her own beauty, despised and turned into an instrument of horror. She has become a symbol of power that even the gods could not control. And now, to save his mother and prove that fate does not rule man, Perseus set off to the edge of the world, to the land of night where the Gorgons live. Those whose power is higher than human came to his aid, the gods. Hermes gave winged sandals to fly over land and sea. Athena gave a shining shield that reflected light and glances. Hades gave an invisible helmet to become a shadow in the world of fear. And Perseus received a strong sword that could cut through stone and flesh. The weapon was not just metal. It symbolized the belief that a person, even a mortal, can challenge horror if his heart is pure. But even with all the gifts of the gods, he had to find a way to Medusa's lair. And then 3 Sirens appeared, old witches who saw the world with 1 eye out of 3. Perseus stole this eye to force them to open the way. Now the path to Medusa was open, but no one had ever returned from there alive. And yet Perseus flies to meet the unspeakable, not as an avenger, but as a mortal given the chance to turn the prophecy not into fear, but into glory. Darkness gathered around Perseus as he approached the edge of the world, where the sun does not shine, and even the stars seem extinguished. The land of the Gorgons is like a petrified curse. It is covered with silent statues, the stone remains of warriors, travelers, monsters who dared to look into the eyes of one who was once a woman. Medusa slept. Her breath spread like mist between her snake hair, and her body writhed in a dream, as if in a premonition. But even in her sleep she was deadly. Perseus had no right to look directly. One look, and his heart would turn to stone along with his body. So he raised the shining shield of Athena, the reflection in which became his only sight. Every step he took was a dance on the edge of fate. Every breath was a challenge to the gods. Perseus did not come as a murderer, but as one who had come to free the world from horror and Medusa from curse. His sword was not a weapon, but an instrument of justice. There she was, before him. Her snakes hissed, as if whispering the names of those she had already defeated. But this time, their whispers dissolved in the brilliance of the moonlight reflected in the shield. Perseus raised his sword and, in one single ruthless yet pure movement, cut off the Gorgon's head. Not only blood gushed from the severed neck, but also Pegasus, the winged horse born from Medusa's last sigh. He was a symbol that even in the death of a monster, beauty could be born. The myth deepened. Medusa was not just a monster. She was the mother of magic, the source of a new beginning. Perseus hid her head in a sack, not looking, because even dead, she could destroy life. And the space itself begins to change around him, as if the earth itself sighs with relief, freed from the burden of the curse. On the way back, the hero carries with him not only a trophy. He carries proof that fear can be defeated if you look at it not directly, but through the wisdom reflected in the shield. But the journey is not over yet. He is waiting for betrayal, love, the fight for justice, and a meeting with a fate that no one will escape. But it is here, in the darkness, that Perseus became what he was supposed to become from the beginning. A hero not only of myth, but of a legend that the world remembers. He flies on Pegasus over the sea, holding death in a bag. And even the gods bow their heads, because for the first time a person was able to go where only shadows reigned. The myth of Odysseus. The sea was silent. Its silence was deeper than the night that covered Odysseus' ship with a dark veil. Ahead was an invisible shore, shrouded in legends that even the gods did not dare to tell aloud. There, among the rocks, lived the Sirens, creatures with voices that tore the soul to pieces, not with their hands, not with weapons, but with music. And everyone who heard their singing went to the bottom, not because they wanted to die, but because their voice sounded the truth that no heart can bear. Odysseus knew, this part of the journey is not about the strength of hands, about the strength of will. He ordered his men to plug their ears with wax, but he himself ordered to tie himself to the mast. He wanted to hear what destroys others. He wanted to know the limit where the mind burns in temptation and the heart begins to whisper, "Swim to us." The ship was approaching, and then a song rose from the fog. It could not be described in words. It was neither joyful nor sad. It was deeper than either state. It knew your fears. It remembered everything you had forgotten. It promised not death. It promised an answer. Odysseus pulled at the ropes, screamed, begged, not from pain, from a mad desire to step onto the shore where these voices lived. His eyes filled with tears, and his soul was torn by the beauty of the song that no mortal should hear. But the sailors heard nothing. They rowed like machines, and the ship sailed by. The Sirens saw. They knew that he would survive. But that was why they sang even louder, not to kill, but to leave a crack in his mind through which doubt would seep when he was left alone again. For their gift was not death, their gift is doubt, which lives in a man longer than any sword. When the shore disappeared and the voices fell silent, Odysseus faltered. His heart beat slowly as if tired of fighting the invisible. He was not a victor, he was a survivor, and to survive, having heard the Sirens' song, was to be changed forever. His eyes grew deeper, his thoughts darkened, for now he carried not just memories of battles or storms, he carried within him a temptation that had no form, only sound. And perhaps in that moment he became not only a warrior and a traveler, but a mirror of humanity. For each of us has our own Siren's song, the one that beckons and calls, mysterious and elusive. And it is up to us to decide whether we will climb the cliffs or walk past, bound but alive. What Odysseus experienced among the Sirens remained unrecorded in any of the scrolls. He did not tell his wife Penelope about it, did not share it with his companions, and not because he forgot, but because he could not find the words. Because the voice of the Sirens is not just a sound, it is a mirror. In it, everyone sees themselves as they are afraid to be, and in this depth, real fear, not to lose their lives, but to see the truth. The song of the Sirens is the secret language of the subconscious. It awakens memories of past lives, turns out drowned desires, makes the soul respond to frequencies that only the universe carries. In their singing, the temptation of knowledge, which brings not enlightenment, but destruction, because the one who knows everything loses support. The Sirens do not scream, they do not lure with sweet promises, they whisper the truth, and this truth is poison, because it is not like what we were taught. It is without God, without morality, without pity. It is only a reflection of being, where there is no good and evil, but there is an emptiness filled with forms. The sailors who believed that those creatures were only half women, half birds, did not understand the main thing. Sirens are not beings, but vibrations. They live not in rocks, but in the cracks of reality, in the narrow places between the visible and invisible worlds, and when you pass through them, a part of you remains there. Odysseus never laughed sincerely again. He no longer trusted his own dream, because deep down, even in peace, he heard a faint sound, a memory, an echo, and although legends say that he returned home a hero, we know otherwise. He returned, a shadow, wiser, stronger, but deeply broken. For he who has heard the voice of the Sirens and survived will never be the same again. So are we. In every life there is a moment when something tempts, knowledge, an idea, truth, and we have to choose, to listen or to pass by. But like Odysseus, even bound, we have already changed. For the very meeting with the song is an initiation, a transition, a break with the past. And perhaps that is why myths live. Not because of what once was, but because every day we pass by our own Sirens again and again. And the question is not whether we hear them, but whether we have the strength to leave the silence within ourselves. In the legends of Perseus, who raised his sword against the monster, and of Odysseus, who survived the temptations of the unknown, the truth about ourselves is hidden. Each of us once stands before the mirror of Medusa, a fear that paralyzes, and each of us swims through the song of the Sirens, a temptation that changes forever. Myths are not just stories from the past. They are encrypted codes of the soul. They are secret messages that speak not about ancient heroes, but about our trials, our choices, our strength. And every time we return to these stories, we seem to remember. We have the strength to look horror in the eye and not turn off the path. There is wisdom in passing by a voice that promises everything but takes away the essence. A myth is a living organism, and when we listen to it, it awakens something in us. A memory that is not from our childhood, a fear that is not from this life, a power that is not of the body, but of the spirit. So ask yourself, who will you be when you meet your Medusa? And will you recognize the voice of your Sirens? Subscribe if the poem is in the words of the ancient gods. Press the bell if you hear the myths calling you. And leave a comment if you have ever heard a voice that is not of this world. Because here, on this channel, we remember what has long been forgotten. And we talk about what others are silent about.